Have you ever felt stuck with your 5K time? You're training hard, doing the workouts, but still the progress seems to have hit a wall. Well, today we're going to show you a workout that could be the key to unlocking faster times. The workout is not just about running harder, it's about running smarter. And I know that sounds a little bit vague, but trust me, by the end of this video, you'll not only understand that it works, but be ready to try it out yourself. So stick with us because we've seen some incredible results, especially for females over the age of 45, and we'll be sharing exactly how you can get those same results.
We all dream about finding that one secret that's going to take our running to the next level, right? Something that's going to make us feel faster, stronger, and more capable. But what if I told you that for female runners, it's not actually about adding more miles or running harder, but it's actually about timing your efforts perfectly? That's what makes the Coach Parry just-in-time intervals so powerful. We've helped countless female runners over the age of 45 shave minutes off their 5K time. I'm talking minutes, not seconds. But before we get into how the system works, let's start with the basics. So Shona, what exactly are intervals and should everyone be doing them?
Yeah, to start off there, Dev, people overcomplicate this concept. We think that intervals need to be super complicated. Really, intervals are just about managing hard intervals of work with periods of recovery. So you may be doing certain intensities for a couple of 100 meters or for 1 to 2 minutes, and you balance that out with a period of rest. But here's the thing, and Dave, your question is quite key, is that not everyone should be doing intervals, especially if you are new to running or coming back from an injury. It's really important that we build a base and a foundation before we jump into these intervals. But before we talk about when to start intervals, let's just touch on, Dev, one of the biggest mistakes I see female runners over the age of 45 making when they want to add these intervals into their plan.
And I suppose, Shona, that's why we're here today, is to help them avoid making those mistakes. So what exactly is that biggest mistake you see?
Hands down, Dev, one of the biggest mistakes I see female runners over the age of 45 make is they try to run their interval sessions too hard. So they think while they're doing the interval sessions that I must go harder and harder and harder in those sessions. And that is by far one of the biggest mistakes. Even last week, Dev, I was running a track session with some of my friends, and we're doing a couple of 600-meter repeats, and two of the girls just set off like a house on fire for those first 2 reps. By the end of the session, they were just fatiguing and getting slower and slower and slower throughout the rest of the session and just couldn't maintain all the sets that we were doing.
And Shona, what happens when you do start too fast like that?
Well, really, you're just building undue fatigue. You're going out too hard, building up fatigue, and then you're not able to maintain all your repetitions throughout. So you're not getting the full benefit of the session. And because they're pushing too hard, they're not then allowing themselves enough recovery between all the different repetitions. And when we run in an over-fatigued state like that, that is when we're putting ourselves at risk of injury. But Dev, before we dive into how to do these intervals right and avoid this kind of burnout, we have to talk about why pacing your easy runs is just as important as pacing your intervals.
Yeah, exactly, Sean. If you're not running your easy runs easy enough, the problem with that is then you mentioned that unnecessary fatigue. You carry that unnecessary fatigue on top of fatigue into your quality sessions or your interval type sessions. And with that fatigue, you actually just don't have the capacity to do the interval sessions the way they are supposed to be executed.
That is a really good point, Dev. And the key thing here is that balance is everything. Your easy runs are meant to help you and help your body recover while building endurance without adding more stress. And you can't give your best efforts, which means you're not getting the full benefit of the workout. Even worse than that is that you increase your risk of injury. So the key here is to run your easy runs really easy so that when it's time to hit those intervals, you're fresh and you're ready to push hard.
So many runners jump into intervals without actually knowing whether or not they're ready to take on that kind of intensity. This can only really lead to failure ultimately and potentially worse injuries. So Shona, what are some of the ways that female runners over the age of 45 can check whether or not they are actually ready to start with intervals?
Dev, here at Coach Parry, as you know, we use 4 specific sort of indications or tests that you are ready. The first one is pain. if there is any kind of niggling pain or something that's nagging and just irritating you, you really want to make sure that you get rid of that before you start these intervals. That is definitely what Dev was mentioning around the injury aspect. We want to make sure we get rid of those. The second aspect is what we call the stair test. You need to be able, you're generally fit, you normally should be able to walk up a flight of stairs and not feel like your legs are too heavy or that you're out of breath. If you are feeling like that, you're just not recovered enough for those interval sessions. And then there are two internal measures that we like to use that can help tell whether or not you're ready for these intervals. The first one is resting heart rate. So if you're tracking your resting heart rate every morning, making sure that you're following those trends, if you start to see that resting heart rate increase by a couple of beats over a few days, it's just an indication that it's a bit of a red flag. It could be that you're not recovering properly. It could be that you haven't slept well enough. It could be just stress in life. And so you want to then rather ensure that you're doing an easier session rather than throwing in some intervals. And then lastly, a great tool to use as well is HRV. Again, just ensure you're getting really good measures. So a chest strap is absolutely key. And if you're seeing that your HRV numbers are going down and consistently going down, again, another red flag that your body is just not quite ready for these intervals.
Right, so you're feeling good. You know you've done all the checks. You're ready to add intervals into your training. Shona, kick us off with an example of a just-in-time interval.
Awesome, Dev. One of my absolute favorites is heel repeats. And this is something that builds strength in runners. Not strength like we speak about in resistance training, but running strength, and which is really, really important for females over the age of 45 as well. So I like to sort of kick it off with 1 minute repeats. And the goal here, or the key here, is not to try and find the steepest hill possible. Everyone will normally go the steeper the better, and that is not the case. You're looking for an interval or a hill that is around 3 to 5% gradient. You don't want steeper than that. When we go steeper than that, you're really putting a lot of strain on the back of your lower limb, so your Achilles, perhaps even the plantar fascia, and putting yourself at more risk of injury. We generally do 4 to 6 repetitions of these heel repeats, but the key thing here again is the recovery. I don't mind whether you walk down or jog down, but you want to feel recovered before you start your next repetition. The next aspect you want to be thinking about is that all of your repetitions are done at an equal, sustained effort. So you don't want to start too hard and then die a slow death with each repetition. And equally, you don't want to start too slow and then really get faster and faster. You want all the repetitions to be at an equal, sustained, hard effort. We've got another important interval session that we want to cover here today. And these are really, really good for helping speed endurance. And these are track intervals. Dev?
Yeah, Sean. So track intervals are sort of the next progression now from, you mentioned in the hill repeats as a form of strength, running strength. The track intervals are now another good way to measure progress as well as also measure your consistency. So there are different types of track intervals. I'm not going to go into all of them, but a good example is sort of a 400 meter or a 600 meter interval. Again, looking at about 4 to 6 repetitions, probably about a 60 to 90 second rest period between each of those, slightly longer rest with slightly longer intervals. But to drive your point home, they need to be a hard sustained effort, but now these are done again at that consistent effort throughout all of those intervals. So not necessarily trying to push a max effort pace just because they're on the track and just because now they're flat doesn't mean they're a maximum sprint effort. Sustained effort throughout the entire intervals. And I talk about sort of measuring progress and we talk about the different kinds of intervals, but through your training plan, you then progress in terms of the kind of intervals you do. So with hills for strength, for example, those longer track intervals that might be more speed, endurance, stamina type of intervals. And then closer to race day, further down in the plan, we will then start to work on maybe some shorter speed type of intervals, really to get that top end speed going. So that's really the progression that we refer to when we talk about intervals and making sure that you are doing them still at the right paces for what we're trying to achieve in each of those sessions.
And that's the beauty, Dev, of the just-in-time interval system. It's really not about the intervals themselves, right? It's about ensuring that you're hitting the intervals at the right time in your training with the right intensity. And this system works because it allows you to train smarter, not harder. And it's been a game changer for so many female runners over 45. And so if you're ready to break through that 5K plateau, or if you want to start seeing real progress in your running, join my free online training where we'll dive even deeper into how the system works. Click on the link on screen now to save your seat.